If I told you that there was a film in which Gary Oldman played a character with dwarfism, you'd probably laugh in disbelief. Surely such a thing would never be allowed, and such a great actor would never stoop so low. Literally. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Tiptoes. Tiptoes is a perfect example of how not to make a film exploring sensitive issues. It is probably the most unintentionally offensive film I've ever seen. The cheesy and condescending title and tagline speak volumes. The trailer makes this out to be a romantic comedy, but it's actually a romantic drama that's meant to explore sensitive issues, but it fails in every aspect. The film is centred around dwarfism, issues related to it, and how other people perceive those with dwarfism. The intentions behind this movie may have been noble and good, but whatever positive impact it might have had was completely ruined by some truly awful, mind-boggling decisions. Primarily, the casting of Gary Oldman as a dwarf, in what the film's trailer describes as
the role of a lifetime.
Not sure he'd agree with that. Now, I have no problem with able-bodied actors playing characters with conditions or disabilities, as long as it's done respectfully and ably. No, that wasn't a pun, get your mind out of the gutter. Consider My Left Foot, in which Daniel Day-Lewis plays a poet with severe cerebral palsy, and I Am Sam, which features Sean Penn playing a man with learning difficulties. In both cases, the actors clearly did their homework, and their portrayals are nothing short of breathtaking, earning them an Oscar and a nomination respectively. But here, it's like comparing a PhD dissertation with the average Donald Trump tweet. You want to know what spellbinding techniques they used to make Gary Oldman look like a convincing dwarf? You're not going to believe this. He gets on his knees. Oh yes. And they made very little effort to hide it. You can see quite clearly here that he's got his feet tucked up by his ass. It's even more obvious when he tries to walk. Oh man, I can't do this. I just can't. They tried to explain this away by giving him a cane and a hunchback. As Kate Beckinsale explained, he was fitted with prosthetics and harnesses to make him hunch over and strap his arms back to make them look shorter. That didn't work because they're still obviously far too long. It was amazing what they did to him. Oh, it sure was. They also used body doubles for certain shots and camera angles to emphasise different heights. But unlike in The Lord of the Rings, where these techniques work flawlessly, here the body doubles only serve to emphasise how unconvincing Gary Oldman's proportions are, and the camera angles don't work because they don't hide how ridiculous he looks. It's a travesty, and it approaches blackface levels of misrepresentation. I cannot imagine why they thought this was okay, or what was going through Gary Oldman's head the whole time.
I'm a motherfucker. I'm a dick too. Yeah? I'm a fuckwad. I'm a fucking fart.
But to his credit, he gives an incredible performance considering the material he was given, although his southern US accent is pretty questionable.
You knocked up this great girl and you didn't tell her that her baby's probably gonna be little.
Given how many dwarves appear in the film, it's astonishing that the filmmakers couldn't find one to fill this role. Peter Dinklage could have done it. Why not cast him? Oh yeah, Peter Dinklage is in this, and he absolutely 100% makes this film. He plays, prepare yourself for this, a hedonistic, sexist, French radical communist. As you can imagine, he provides some of the best lines in the film.
Bourgeois shit makes me want to vomit. I am French, and I'm proud to be French. I am proud not to eat this disgusting swill. I think the women's liberation movement is an excuse for every poor female pig who needed a reason not to clean up after themselves.
He's paired up with Patricia Arquette, who plays a stereotypical new age hippie complete with dreadlocks and some choice quotes.
Hey, the asshole is the strongest muscle in the human body. Hey, you can't steal food. Food's from God. It's plentiful. God wants me to eat.
I feel like death.
That's great. That's a great transition.
You better be careful, Maurice, because they could lock you up in a loony bin. And that's not fun.
These two provide the film's comic relief. At least that's what I'm guessing. Their toxic and volatile behaviour provide a lot of the comedy, and I can't think of any other reason why these characters would be in the film, because apart from padding out the runtime, they don't affect the plot in any significant way. The main plot focuses on the relationship between Matthew McConaughey and Kate Beckinsale's characters. They're meant to be getting married, but there's not a lot of chemistry between them. Sure, they spend a lot of time in bed and she almost sucks his dick at one point, but there's something stiff and insincere about their interactions, like they're just going through the motions. This is partly due to the actors themselves. Matthew McConaughey is alright, and they both have their good moments, but Kate Beckinsale is atrociously wooden at times. Perhaps unsurprising, she is the only one of the top-billed actors who didn't go on to win an Academy Award.
I'm just so embarrassed.
Just think about that for a second. 3 actors in this film later won Oscars, and this is their dirty little secret. But anyway, this relationship is also just a bit unconvincing because of the drama the characters create for themselves, much of which is exaggerated, contrived, and so petty that it does nothing to endear them to the audience. Seriously, they act like fucking children, and it removes a lot of levity from the drama. You know, whatever levity was left after casting Gary Oldman as a dwarf. Alright, before I go on another rant about that, let's move on to the good stuff and go through the plot itself. The title plays as Gary Oldman and Peter Dinklage tear up the highway on motorbikes. We then see Matthew McConaughey and Kate Beckinsale's characters, Stephen and Carol. Stephen tells her he's going to see his family, but won't give any more details.
Family fucked up or something?
He doesn't even stay long enough to get a blowjob. That's a family man right there. We go back to Gary Oldman and Peter Dinklage, playing Rolf and Maurice, pissing on the side of the road. They see Lucy, played by Patricia Arquette, get kicked off a coach, probably for being a fucking weirdo. So Maurice very generously offers her a ride, so he can maybe get a ride himself, if you know what I mean. Stephen arrives at a convention for people with dwarfism, where he meets his parents and his uncle, the head of the Little People's Defence League. So he's a normal-sized child of parents with dwarfism, which is actually far from uncommon, but he identifies as a dwarf himself. He takes his uncle's daughters dancing so the uncle can get some action. You think I'm joking?
Here's a good stiff one. Oh, I mean a cocktail.
Rolf and company arrive at the convention, where he meets Stephen, and it turns out the two are brothers. Maurice and Lucy go in to steal food, and almost immediately get kicked out. Stephen goes home, and Carol starts giving him grief because he won't tell her anything. She then drops the bombshell that she's pregnant, and he's not exactly over the moon about it. Meanwhile, Rolf and his posse ride up to a seedy motel.
I feel glamorous just being here.
Of course you do. Which is why you immediately start breaking things. Lynch from Kane and Lynch mistakes Lucy for a prostitute, which, let's be honest, is understandable. There's only one room. As a result, we get this legendary exchange.
You got any rebels?
No, I don't. And if you start fucking that girl while I'm trying to sleep, I'm gonna kill you.
Oh, then you put your headphones on and face the wall, my friend, because tonight I'm feeling good.
During their drunken shag, Maurice starts writhing in pain, but refuses to let Rolf call a doctor, so Rolf says, fuck this, and abandons him. He goes to see his ex-girlfriend Sally. It's not specified, but I'm fairly sure she's a prostitute, and she's played by former porn star Bridget Powers, who is often credited as, you guessed it, Bridget the Midget. When you learn that the original script, written when writer-director Matthew Bright was only 18, was meant to be a raucous comedy about little people fucking each other, this movie starts to make a lot more sense. Sally, who might be a prostitute, wants to get back together with Rolf, but he doesn't seem too bothered. And then her friend, or pimp, or client, we don't really know, shows up asking for money. He's not too happy about seeing a clearly superior male in her bedroom, and she makes the situation so much worse.
Because we are gonna fuck, okay? Is that what you want to do?
Adrizi, we're not fucking.
And then there's a fight scene, and honestly, it's glorious. Rolf gets the hell out of there and goes to Stephen's house, but he's not there, so he and Carol have a heart-to-heart. Rolf reveals that he and Stephen are twins, even though the actor looks and actually is a decade older than him. Stephen hasn't mentioned anything about her to his family, and nothing about his family to her, which, considering they're about to get married, is shady as fuck, and also completely unbelievable. How could they have been in a relationship for years and not discussed this? That's first date level stuff. Oh, so tell me about your family. Oh yeah, they're really nice. Yeah, they're cool, yeah. They're all 4 foot tall, you know, but it's all good. Oh really? Tell me about that. See, there you go. That wasn't difficult, was it? Anyway, back at the motel room, the star-crossed lovers are laying about and taking the piss, so Lynch shows up to kick them out of his property. Their totally reasonable response is to pull out a gun and beat the shit out of him. Understandably a bit miffed by Stephen's deception, Carol soon loses the moral high ground by storming over to his workplace to berate him in front of his trainees, while being completely insensitive about dwarfism.
I think you could have let me know that everyone in your family's a midget.
Well, they're not midgets, Carol. They're dwarfs.
Whatever.
She's freaking out because their kid might be born with dwarfism, and they have an overlong and petty argument before parting ways.
What did you think I was gonna do when I found out your family were all midgets? Huh? I mean, did you think I'd just walk away?
No, look, you keep saying midgets, you're gonna piss a whole bunch of people off, okay?
You know, I really don't care about that stuff, okay?
Okay.
By the way, that is actually Kate Beckinsale's lucky hat, which she insisted on wearing as a condition for being in this film. I would say it's ridiculous, but the whole film is ridiculous, so it gets a pass. Back at the house, Carol and Rolf have another heart-to-heart. She's worried about the possible medical implications of dwarfism, so he takes her to see his uncle who knows more about these issues, and they give her reassurance and some very wise advice, despite her cringeworthy faux pas.
Now, why on earth would you feel embarrassed?
Oh, because here I am questioning whether or not to bring a person into the world who's just like you. Oh, God, what that must sound like.
It's obvious that scenes like this were supposed to have the most impact on the audience by dispelling myths about dwarfism and making the audience more comfortable with it. Here the movie's good intentions are most evident. It's like a diamond in the middle of a turd. Now reassured, Carol talks to Stephen over the phone, but the way it's shot makes it look weirdly seductive, like she's on a sex hotline.
Have you been thinking about things?
Stephen has refused to come home and deal with his issues like a mature adult, and when their conversation ends, he throws his phone away like a toddler. They all get invited to a party at the uncle's house, but for some inexplicable reason, they bring along the odd couple, who immediately start causing problems. Maurice starts arguing with the uncle because he doesn't approve of his bourgeois methods of non-violent campaigning.
You go. We are the little people. Please, we are so cute and cuddly. Don't discriminate against us.
And would rather see a violent insurrection against the normies, Children of the Corn style.
What you people don't understand is that political power, it grows out of the barrel of a gun.
Shit starts to get real, and Rolf has to drag him away. He then has an argument with Stephen because he can't understand why Stephen kept his family hidden from his fiancée. Stephen once again reacts like a mature adult.
What's it to you, man?
And the argument quickly descends into the typical YouTube comment section.
Sometimes you are so fucking full of shit.
I'm full of shit.
Yeah, full of shit.
Carol defends Rolf, but he acts like a dickhead and storms off to find Sally, who he's sort of got back together with. But since she's a complete whore, he finds her fucking a famous black guy in full view of the other guests. They didn't even have the courtesy to lock the door. The brothers quickly reconcile over this betrayal. Bros before hoes indeed. Carol and Stephen have a deep chat about dwarfism and associated medical issues. Again, I'm sure this was meant to be sensitive and heartfelt, but the scene ruins itself. To convey how comfortable Carol is becoming with dwarfism, they have her ask this.
Have you ever been involved with a little person sexually?
What?
You know, the kids would come over, we'd sit in a circle, play doctor, and that kind of thing. Could have been more than 10 or 12, so that doesn't really count.
Was it you had a circle jerk with a bunch of little people?
What?
I would have loved to see that.
What the fuck? And then they start making out. At this point, I'm fully convinced the writer just wanted to make midget porn, and I've seen porn with better stories than this, to be fair. They then go to meet his parents, and then her parents show up, with predictably awkward results.
No! God!
Let me have a 7 and 7.
No!
Say over
God,
here.
please, no! No! No!
She'll have a vodka tonic.
No!
Vodka tonic.
Well, actually, I trained cadets to be firefighters, and fires are pretty much recession-proof. I'd say it's pretty steady, yeah.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. I guess this scene is meant to highlight how awkward normies are around dwarves. There's a setup for that question, the elephant in the room. It seems like they're about to say something incredibly offensive.
I certainly wouldn't want anyone to think that we're prejudiced people.
Daddy!
But it turns out to be something completely unrelated.
So unless you can bring yourself to have a Jewish wedding, would you at least consider a civil ceremony? Otherwise, we won't be able to invite them.
Funny, right? We skip forward a few months to the wedding. Bonnie and Clyde have plonked themselves nearby, as they clearly haven't been invited. And Peter Dinklage now has dreadlocks. That image alone is worth the price of admission. As Rolf leaves, Carol gives him a very inappropriate kiss. Then we skip forward again until just after the birth. The baby turns out to have dwarfism and Stephen freaks out. This is because he witnessed Rolf in terrible pain because of medical issues when he was a child, and he can't bear to think that his child might have to go through the same. This is why he's been incredibly secretive about his family, and why he's been acting like a complete tosser throughout the film. But has he faced his inner torment and matured as a person during all this time? Has he fuck? Their arguments last for months, and eventually he can't take it anymore, pussies out and leaves her. Yes, he leaves his suffering wife and child. What a stellar human being. So Carol goes to Rolf's cabin, where Romeo and Juliet are living the high life. They sit down to have dinner, but Maurice ruins everything with his radical politics and misogyny.
We need a woman around here. Someone to do the dishes, someone to wash the clothes.
In your dreams, pal.
Lucy gets so pissed off that she walks out on him. And that's it. That's the resolution to their story arc, and we never see them again. Steven shows up to convince Carol to take him back, but he hasn't learned anything and acts like a complete knob, so she's not into it. Instead, she grows closer to Rolf, as she has throughout the story. Because he's not a total bellend and actually steps up and looks after the baby, he gets the girl during a stargazing scene that's cliche as fuck. And that's how it ends. Not a god-awful story, just moderately awful. As a piece of filmmaking, the most you can say about Tiptoes is that it's competently made, except for the music, which is really inappropriate at times. It's a disjointed, plodding mess that more closely resembles a Lifetime or daytime TV movie rather than a serious effort by a major film studio. The movie suffered enormously as a result of interference by its producers. According to director Matthew Bright, the film was a grueling experience to make due to the producers' meddling, which apparently started with a dispute over Kate Beckinsale's hat on the first day of shooting. Peter Dinklage later claimed that the original cut submitted by Bright, which had a 2.5-hour running time, was gorgeous. But the studio then fired Bright and recut the film, removing an hour of footage, and the result was this abomination, which Dinklage described as a weird little quirky rom-com but with dwarves, which contradicted exactly what the film was intended to oppose, the cutesiness of little people. Bright tried to get his name taken off the credits and was scathing about the producers and the film. Probably due to this, he has never directed a film since. After this abomination was screened at the Sundance Film Festival, as one of the official choices, really, someone up top must have come to their senses because they scrambled to bury this film as fast as possible. Tiptoes was never theatrically released and went straight to DVD, where it remains to this day, for anyone morbidly curious enough to seek it out. I would genuinely like to see that elusive director's cut, which apparently still exists, but it's extremely unlikely that it'll ever be released. Perhaps it is indeed a great piece of filmmaking, and not the stilted and underwhelming product we got. And perhaps it does explore issues surrounding dwarfism with the grace and nuance they deserve, instead of the shallow lip service they received. But even if it were a masterpiece, this film would still have been buried faster than Harvey Weinstein's career, because it's utterly offensive and hypocritical to have a movie tell the audience that people with dwarfism can accomplish anything, while at the same time refusing to cast an actor with dwarfism in the main role. That aside, I would still recommend checking this out, if only to see Peter Dinklage as a gun-toting Marxist, and Gary Oldman in the role of a Lifetime. And with that, I'll leave you with Gary Oldman's sick dance moves. Enjoy.
This only goes to show what little people can do, and little people know. When little people fight, we may look easy pickings, but we've got some bite. So never